I'm Rip Esselstyn, and welcome to the Plant Strong podcast. The mission at Plant Strong is to further the advancement of all things within the plant-based movement. We advocate for the scientifically proven benefits of plant-based living and envision a world that universally understands, promotes, and prescribes plants as a solution to empowering your health, enhancing your performance, restoring the environment, and becoming better guardians to the animals we share this planet with. We welcome you wherever you are on your Plant Strong journey, and I hope that you enjoy the show. As someone who has a food line, with my photo on the packaging even, I know how difficult it is to get it right at every level, from flavor profiles, ingredients, taste, all the way to packaging, labeling, marketing, distribution, warehousing, supply chain. It is endless. So I want to learn from some of the best who have done it successfully over the years, which is why I turned to Daniel Staackmann. Daniel is the founder and president of Upton's Naturals, an independently owned, ethical vegan food company based out of Chicago, Illinois. Daniel is a 30-year vegan and longtime advocate for animal rights and environmental sustainability, and he founded Upton's Naturals in 2006 with a do-it-yourself attitude and a slow growth business model. Today, his products, including his wildly popular Seitan products, are sold in thousands of stores nationwide, as well as in international marketplaces. We talk about his personal journey into veganism, as well as his own entrepreneurial journey of selling plant-based products, especially at a time when it wasn't the norm back in 2006. Please welcome to the show, Daniel Staackmann of Upton's Naturals. Where am I talking to you from? Where are you? Are you in Chicago?
Yep, I'm at home in Chicago.
Right. And are you like born and bred in Chicago?
Pretty much, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I've lived here my whole life, so.
Wow. Do you love the Windy City?
I love it, but I'm not one of those city pride kind of guys, like trash talking, every other city, like Chicago's the best, or whatever it is. I'm happy a lot of places. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, you and I met for the first time. I think it was back in March at the Expo West.
Yes.
Which is obviously, for people that don't know, Expo West, it's a natural expo that has all the basically natural food lines, kind of in the country and all over the world. It's one of the biggest that I've ever been to. I mean, how many different food companies would you say have booths and are hawking their stuff?
I can't remember the number of exhibitors. It's definitely in the thousands for sure. I know that the attendees, I think the highest, maybe it was pre-pandemic, was like 100,000.
Yeah.
So it's big. It's definitely one of the largest shows of any kind in the US.
Yeah, I know that after I get done with 3 days at Expo West, I'm dizzy and kind of out of sorts for a good week. Are you?
Yeah. I guess I'm used to it by now, but it can be very intense.
Uh-huh. Well, so just for people that don't know, Daniel, you're the founder and CEO of Upton's Naturals. You've got a whole bunch of different products. Your first product was Seitan, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now, do you pronounce it Seitan, Seitan?
I'll go either way. I mean, largely I say Seitan, but sometimes I let a little Seitan slip.
Exactly. And you really are one of the iconic meat alternative brands in the marketplace. And you were really one of the first. So, I mean, kudos to you, Daniel, for your vision, your foresight, and your passion in this space. I'd love to know. So let's go back. You kind of like you're growing up in Chicago. You got brothers and sisters?
I am an only child.
Okay. All right. Only
So,
child. And when in the world did you decide that you were going to stay away from meat and dairy products and all that comes along with those foods?
yeah, I was 15, and I only had one friend that was like just vegetarian, and he had kind of planted that seed in my head, and I thought about it on and off for, I don't know, probably a number of weeks. And I was out to dinner with my family, and I had if you know what a French dip sandwich is. I Something about it. I took a couple of bites, and I was like, "That's it. I'm just done with this." And I put it down and never looked back.
So you were
Um,
15.
yeah,
And how, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 46.
Wow. So you are still a young pup. You truly are.
Eh,
So it's been close to what, 30 some odd years?
31 years roughly.
Right. Wow. And do you remember, just help me with the math. So what year was that when you were 15 and you
92, I think,
uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
we're in 2023. So.
Yep. And do you refer to yourself as plant-based,
Oh no,
vegan,
I'm
what?
vegan. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. What?
I've acknowledged plant-based. I can accept that. We put it on the packaging,
Mhm.
but I'm a vegan.
Uh-huh.
We're a vegan company, so
And so explain that to me. I mean, because you responded very quickly. No, I'm vegan. So
yeah.
like, what's behind that?
Um, Really, it's more of an ethical stance. I started this mostly for animal rights. Like I'm all for the health benefits, and of course the environmental benefits behind veganism or a plant-based diet. But um, I just had maybe a different motivation than others that are starting today. I mean, not that you can't be into animal rights today and
Mm-hmm.
and decide to go plant-based, but plant-based is just like it's a softer term. There was maybe a lot of negative associations with the word vegan, and especially with food uh, 30 years ago, because it's come a long way for sure. So um, I think it's more of a consumer facing thing. Like the studies have shown that people respond better to plant-based. So if that's what it takes, then fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm. And so this friend of yours back when you were 15 that suggested or planted the seed, as you said,
yes,
did he plant the seed for health reasons or was it because of
no, yeah, it
ethical
was
reasons?
strictly ethical.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't kept in touch with him, but I guess I would be surprised if he was still vegan or vegetarian. But
Wow. Well, that'd be, I mean, yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty cool because look how far you've come,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of which, um, so you started your company Upton's in, is it 2006?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Little bit before. I mean, I think we got the incorporation papers and all that, and signed stuff in 2006. But yeah,
Yeah. And did you have anybody else that you were doing this with, or were you just kind of like the Lone Ranger here?
I had a friend. It's kind of not a terribly long story, but essentially, we had been discussing like, oh, we were going to try to buy a conventional bakery that was looking to sell, and we were going to turn it into a vegan bakery. Well, that conversation lagged on a few weeks, and by the time we went to the bakery, it was sold, and
Uh,
mentally I had already committed to doing something, that might allow for some activism, and obviously food's a great way to do that. So I kind of looked around, and seitan was always a favorite food of mine. And there was just one national brand and really just a couple of restaurants making it locally. So I came up with that idea, and then we got into a shared space and just kind of figured it out.
Figured it out. What was it about seitan that you were enamored with?
Just the texture, it's very meaty, obviously. I've also really always admired the small ingredient list, which is huge for me. Like if you notice, all of the Upton's products always have really recognizable ingredients, extremely clean and simple. We don't use any, natural flavors or any of that kind of stuff, yeast extracts. But yeah, it was a favorite, and I had only made it one other time, and that went terribly wrong. I actually made it for my girlfriend at the time's family for Thanksgiving, and it was yeah, and I was like, I stayed up all night. I was like 11:30 or whatever, and I started making this seitan for the first time, and it was so spongy, and
Wow.
I brought it the next day, and everybody was really nice about it, but yeah, it wasn't until several years later when I just thought, I'm going to give this a try again, and then it was a lot of trial and error.
Right. So seitan's how you started Upton's, and I know you've been asked this question a bunch, but why in the world is it called Upton's? Where'd that come from?
Well, I knew that people like a name and a face, right, on products. I didn't want either to be mine. And there's really nothing special about Dan's seitan. At least to me, it just didn't work. So another friend had suggested, like, what about Upton's? There's a book, a very famous book written about the meat industry here in Chicago by a gentleman named Upton Sinclair.
Yeah.
We don't advertise that, we don't generally talk about that association, but largely I just thought that it was a unique enough name. It kind of went with the overall aesthetic that we were trying to go for with this character. And he's been a great salesperson, much better than I, could ever hope to be. So
let me ask you that. So the dude that's on the front of all your packaging, that very, very handsome lad, that wears the bow tie, and he looks like he's from the 20s or 30s. Is that Upton Sinclair?
It is not. Oh. Yeah, we also made sure that it looked nothing like the author Upton. It's just
just a dude,
just a guy, totally fictional, created by our friend Johnny Sampson, who's an illustrator, and just a guy.
Well, so did as soon as you saw it, were you like, that's it?
Yeah,
I like that.
That's the guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then depending upon the product, he either has a mustache or doesn't, or has a crazy, handlebar mustache or whatever.
Well, we tried to have fun with it. So where, whenever we launched a new item, we would have, a new facial hair to kind of go with it. And we only somewhat recently started kind of recycling those and pairing them. Like if there was, we have a cheesy bacon mac. And that has the bacon Upton on it with like the little pencil mustache.
So my understanding from all of my research Daniel, is that you are currently the number one selling Seitan brand in the natural and the Mulo channels.
Yes,
Is that your understanding?
it is. Yeah.
I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. And, for somebody like myself, who's also been in the food space since about 2010, 2010 to 2020, it was with Whole Foods, where they helped me launch the Engine 2 brand. And then since then, going off on my own with the Plan Strong brand, I can tell you that, what you've done is really almost nothing short of remarkable. And looking back, since 2006, when you started this, do you ever go, holy crap, I mean, this is phenomenal? Or are you like, this is where I am, and I knew I'd get here. And I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I generally don't take a lot of time to stop and pat myself on the back. And time is funny, right? Like, so it's like those early little wins that you're like, wow, this is really exciting. And then all of a sudden it's 17 years later and, things just kind of happen. But,
well, it is funny how the wins start to stack up, and then you've got something, substantial. Can you remember, like, what was the first win that you had where you just were like pumping your fist and super excited?
probably getting into those first Whole Food stores, because that's, we started in a shared space and launched, we pitched to a handful of restaurants in Chicago, just to make sure that people actually like the product, and saved up, enough to get into our own space and get retail packaging. And then went to Whole Foods and launched in, I think, 7 stores with them to start. And that was really exciting to finally see the product on the shelf, and to go and do demos in store. I think I still hold the record for how many cases, any person at any demo had ever sold, wow. in a 3-hour period. That was really exciting. And then the rest kind of, it's a big blur.
Yeah. And so those first 7 Whole Food Market stores you got into, was that in the Chicago area?
Yep. We started, I was delivering everything myself, just in a van and coolers. And then we expanded to 20 stores with them. And I think that went through a third-party distributor. And then when we got to the full 40 in the region at the time, we went through their DC, and then just continued to expand with them, as like there was someone from the Midwest that had moved to the Southwest region, that contacted us and was like, hey, I want to bring you down here. And, we just had a really slow growth model where we kind of grew region by region with Whole Foods. And when we would launch in a new one, we would get in the car and drive to that region and visit every store and pass out buttons and do demos and meet everybody. And, wow. And then just hope that, like, other independent stores would pick things up. We didn't work with any brokers in the beginning. We didn't have any other sales team or anything. It was just all kind of word of mouth and doing veg fests and demos.
That's seriously boots on the ground. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
That's the way to get after it.
I mean, when you don't have any money to do it the other way and no one's interested, that's what you have to do.
So you were completely self-funded, correct?
Yeah, I actually took out a home equity line of credit in 2005. Wow. In order to do this. If you recall, that was like the height of all of those no doc, loans that that people were taking with crazy balloon payments and all that stuff. And I remember the underwriter was like, "So, is it possible that you could make $100,000 this year?" And I laughed out loud. I was like, "No, there's absolutely no way that I could make make that much money." And she was like, "Let me ask you again. Is it possible that you?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's definitely possible." So I took I only tapped like 40,000 of that and rolled it into the like bare essentials that I needed to get the facility open. And just I've always continued to roll any profit that we've made back into the business in one form or another.
Uh-huh.
So
Do you remember how long it took before you actually were able to make 100,000?
it was at least, I mean, I still haven't taken that for myself.
Right.
But what do I need money for? What am I gonna? Um, but I think because our model was so slow, it was probably 2-3 years before we broke that. Because like the first year was really just food service and like those 5 to 7 restaurants, and then with the Whole Foods. So that was all pretty slow. Probably 2-3 years to break that in sales. And then I always had like a side hustle. The first several years I bought and sold design. You can see like in the background, I've
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I was always hustling and figuring out how to pay the bills and just paying everybody else first, until the point where I'm like, okay, I can pay myself minimum wage now, and now I can get up to 30,000 or whatever the numbers have been over the years. But
Yeah.
yeah.
How many people are now employed by Upton's Naturals?
We are somewhere around 50.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that goes through different channels. Like we've got a separate restaurant and manufacturing division. So
So have you always manufactured your own products, or do you?
yes.
Wow.
Well, on the Seitan side,
Yeah.
yes. There really, especially when we started, there wasn't anybody that you couldn't go to a co-packer and be like, "I'd like you to make Seitan," because nobody knew what that was. And it's a fairly unique process. But when we expanded in 2015, we were actually the first in the world to launch a pre-seasoned packaged jackfruit. And that we had to, work with partners on.
And that's in a retort container. And is, to the best of my knowledge, before you, it was only available in cans.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that was, I worked on that for several years in trying to find anybody, like figure out how to do it. Because I would buy the can myself, and you get it home and you're like, all right, why am I dumping out all of this water from Asia down the drain? And we're shipping all of that extra weight that obviously consumes fuel. And then I have to sit there and wait, a couple hours to slow cook this barbecue. I just kind of want to tear it open and be ready to go. So I had called basically every brand, throughout Asia with a can. And I would say, like, I'm really interested in buying a lot of jackfruit from you, but I don't want it in the can. Like, is there anything else that we can do here to, like in bulk and they all laughed at me. They were like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Americans don't want jackfruit. Like, that's ridiculous." And I was like, "I will tell me what it costs to invest in whatever it takes." And they all just, blew me off. So ultimately it took getting on a plane without a return ticket, and I just went to a number of different co-packing facilities that had the potential to do it, and figured it out.
So the jackfruit, I mean, that to me is such a absolutely brilliant idea. Can you tell me, based upon like sales, how does the jackfruit doing compared to the seitan?
Well, the when we first launched, the jackfruit was everybody was really excited about it, right? Because it was the first of its kind. I think for some people, it's been a struggle to figure out what else to do with it. We know that people want to make barbecue sandwiches and tacos, and maybe you're having that, I don't know, a couple nights a month sort of thing. So we're at the point where it shot up like crazy, and we got tons of press, and then it kind of plateaued, and now we're on a slow build. So Seitan, I think, is more of your something for for almost like a daily meal or a few times a week. It's a little more versatile.
Yeah,
and it certainly has more protein than jackfruit, which is largely just about the fiber and the texture.
Well, and as we all know, Americans are eaten up with anything that has gobs of protein in it.
Yeah.
And seitan is like the mother ticket.
Yes. Yeah,
I mean,
we have so many like bodybuilders that buy it by the case, and are you sure you want to eat that much seitan? And
I mean, it's about 80% protein, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. Yeah. I'm
like
not a macros guy, but I know it's big.
Well, for our listeners that are interested, I can tell you that if you take any one of Daniel's, seitan products, whether it's the traditional, the chorizo, the bacon, the Italian, the ground, one little 2-ounce serving gives you 18 grams of protein. That's pretty phenomenal, if that's what you're after. Yeah.
Protein's important, but
Yeah.
So is fiber. Fiber, you need fiber.
Yes, you do. Tell me, because I have actually don't remember seeing it. Is there fiber in seitan?
Very little.
Okay, because it's kind of it's from the wheat, right? And so it's a little bit processed. Yeah.
It's about as processed as a loaf of bread.
Right. Tell me, you also have some fava. You've got right. You have a fava product.
Yes.
And is that because of Silence of the Lambs?
It is. It is not. It is my opinion that one of the future paths of the category is in different proteins, since everything is so dominated by soy and wheat and now pea. It just seemed interesting to me to try to work with something that was fava, just to diversify those proteins a little bit.
Yeah. You've also got a hot dog. He is called the Up Dog.
It is. I was on the fence whether to go there with that, but it was unanimous. And
is that made out of seitan?
It is. Yeah.
Right.
Also very high in protein.
Yeah. Got it. The chorizo. What is the chili that gives that its kick?
It's a guajillo pepper.
And I've never even heard of that. Is that kind of like between a habanero and a jalapeno?
I forget where it is on the Scoville scale or whatever, but it's not too spicy. It's just like it's a dried pepper, and we've worked with the same supplier on that since we started. a Mexican spice purveyor in town that has a very unique blend.
Yeah. And in your bacon, you have your bacon seitan. You've got a hickory smoke that's in there that really
Yeah.
kind of makes it hum, doesn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice, nice. So if I go to your website right now, do you know roughly how many different offerings or SKUs you have? Would it be like 18, 22?
The total count I can't remember, but we've got there's 4 seitans plus the updog. There's 6 soups, 2 macs, and then there are 4 jackfruits and 1 banana blossom.
So what about the vegan holiday roast and gravy? Is that seasonal?
You got me. Yes, the holiday roast is something that we did as a limited time offer just last year. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be back on shelf this year. We were just sort of experimenting with it. We had a retailer come to us looking for some additional options, and we're like, well, the roast market is pretty well saturated, right? Like everybody's got a roast. Even in our home, we almost always have a classic tofurkey every year.
Yeah.
But the one thing that was missing is if you're a single person or a couple going to a family Thanksgiving, and you want to you can have all the sides, but there's no protein for you. You're fighting for oven space, or you basically need to you need to bake off that roast for whatever, an hour, sometimes 2 hours, or however long those things take to produce. And then you're probably not going to eat the whole thing. So our solution was to just have something that's, 1 generous serving or 2 reasonable servings with some gravy in there. That's just like basically ready to go in a couple minutes. You can put it in the microwave, or in a skillet, or in the oven. And
yeah.
So
how extensive is your R&D team? I mean, is that something that you're
it's just it's pretty much just me, and then it depends. Certain projects, I pull in different people from production, or even our marketing manager.
Wow.
We actually, with great story with the soups, we actually had a food scientist at the time on staff when we got a call from a major natural foods retailer, and they said, we're thinking about expanding the soup offerings, because there's really just one brand that has a lot of the shelf space, and we'd like to see some other plant-based items. And would you be interested in taking a shot at it? The turnaround was pretty tight. It was like, you had to have samples within like a month or 2, or could have been less. And I was like, well, I can ask this food scientist to take a crack at it, but I know it's going to take them, several months. So our marketing manager and I, kind of made a list of some of our favorite like homemade soups, and she took the first crack at it. I think we narrowed it down to 8, and got together a week later, and talked about all the feedback we had and refined them another 1 or 2 times. Sent them off to this retailer just in ball jars, and 3 of them were approved. And then we figured out, okay, how are we going to scale this up in time? I think at that point you had like 6 or 8 months until it was on shelf.
That's crazy.
But that's what you have to do, I could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with a bunch of R&D people that, that maybe they're going to get something right. Maybe they're not. Maybe a retailer will actually approve it, or maybe they won't.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always tried to go with direct retailer feedback when it comes to launching products, and my own interests. If I feel good about it or I think it's a good idea, I'll take a stab at it. But
Yeah. Well, those. So, what year was that you launched Soups?
Soups was 21. Because I think the conversation started in 2020.
Yeah.
And then with the pandemic, there was problems at the soup co-packer, just with backup, because everybody was buying soup. So like, we can't fit you in.
Yeah. Well, and for everybody that's listening, the 6 soups that you have on your website is you got a chicken noodle soup. Is that
Chick
basically
Seitan.
from the Seitan? Okay.
Yeah.
Chick Seitan. You got a chick tortilla soup.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds delicious. A minestrone, an Italian wedding soup. What in the world is an Italian wedding soup?
It's it's got our Italian Seitan in there. And I mean, to be honest, I've never had, a conventional Italian wedding soup, but Natalie, our marketing manager, it was something that she had enjoyed, and we knew it was a popular soup in the conventional side of things, and it's basically like a spinach with a little bit of pasta and Italian sausage, and
Yeah. And then the other two, you got a crimson lentil soup.
Crimson lentil, yep.
Yep, which probably does really well in Harvard. And then you have a chicken wild rice soup.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I know, we've got 10 chilies and stews that are now at Whole Foods globally. And so I know how challenging it can be to kind of get those just where you want them.
Mm-hmm.
And so congrats on having 6. That's huge. How did you guys fare during the pandemic? Was that a good time for you or a hard time for you?
I hope that no one would say that it was a good time.
Well,
but I think we did okay. We certainly benefited from people cooking at home a little bit more. And we were lucky, at the factory where we didn't have a lot of cases of people getting extremely sick or anything. And it was okay. It was as good as it could be.
Yeah. So in hearing you talk, I'm really impressed with your, do-it-yourself attitude, your slow growth kind of business mind, which seems to run counter to so many others that are just trying to, go as fast as possible, doing all these, raises and getting, private equity money and basically losing control. And it seems like the one of the things that you've been really good at is, you've self-funded, you've maintained control, you are a sole proprietor.
Yep.
What advice would you give to somebody that's on the sidelines? They're thinking about going into food. Would you say go for it, or would you say stay away? It's just it's an arena that's littered with minefields everywhere you go.
There are a lot of minefields for sure. And I mean, it might call for a separate podcast.
Okay.
For me to just list all of my problems with the food chain, because there are some very dark parts of it. But it really just depends on your own personality and what you have the appetite for, and what your goals are in life. I mean, I didn't start this business to like become a billionaire. I was just a vegan that, wanted to do something for myself. The slow growth model isn't for everybody, but it's definitely much more sustainable. I've had a number of friends that took on that investor money and, didn't realize that even if they weren't giving up the majority of their business, now they're answering to these people that don't really care if you live or die. Like they just, they're only in it to make money. And when your only motivation in life is financial, it's usually not very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had people that have lost their businesses because, they didn't meet the projections that, the investors wanted, and they just stopped returning phone calls. And then what are you left with?
Mm-hmm.
Something that you can't rebuild. When the money stops, that's it.
Speaking of, do you have an end goal with Uptons, or are you kind of just taking it 1 year at a time?
I think it's 1 year at a time. I mean, again, I never planned to be where I was necessarily. So, there are definitely highs and lows with the business at the size that it is now. We in some ways benefited from all of that big money coming into the space. There's a lot of attention, around a very small number of products that people were going into stores to buy. And then a handful of those people converted, if you will, or, decided to expand their meal planning a little bit. And luckily tried some Seitan and enjoyed it and have continued to buy. But with that came a tremendous amount of pressure from retailers saying, like, what do you have that's new? If you don't have innovation, I don't care what this is doing. I've got somebody that's going to give me $10 million for this ad program. And, you're not going to have your space unless you give me something new, or, what can you do for me, basically? And,
in addition to the, 40% markup that I'm taking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's only part of it. When you start talking about certain distributors that are really only they're really only in business because of the ways that they figure out how to charge back suppliers. It's not this old-fashioned idea of, I'm going to buy this widget for $1 and sell it for $2, and then that person's going to sell it for $3. It's, yeah, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to only say I'm going to mark it up this little bit, but then I'm going to figure out a way to scam you out of like a ton of money until you're backed into the corner.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Are your parents still alive, Daniel?
They are.
Wow. What do they think about what you've done with Uptons?
I suspect they're proud,
Yeah. Well, are they entrepreneurial? Is that where you got your entrepreneurialism from?
They are not. I mean, my father, to some extent, he had a small automotive shop for a handful of years, and I think for me, a lot of that came from being an only child, having to figure out a lot of things on my own. And then, I also kind of came from, like the punk and hardcore scene where everything was DIY. All of the shows were, booked in people's basements or whatever. And you just, if you want something, you're the one that needs to figure it out, because no one's going to show up and hand you, whatever it is. Well, with the exception of all of those private equity guys in the last 5 or 7 years or whatever it's been.
So back in the day, were you in the punk rock scene?
Yeah,
you were. Great. Do you? Are you a fan of Moby at all?
I wouldn't say that I'm I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I'm kind of neutral on Moby. I don't have any Moby records, but I appreciate what he's done for veganism and what he's promoted.
Yeah. Well, veganism and animal rights. I had him. I just interviewed him on the podcast last week. super impressive individual.
I enjoyed his restaurant. His
Little Pine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you? Straight edge?
I am. Yeah.
All right. Way to be.
Yeah.
So let's I got a couple more questions I'd love to ask you. So you got all these different products. You got the hot dogs, you got the Seitan, you got the soups, you got the deluxe, mac and cheeses. Tell me about the banana blossom and where that came from. And does it taste like banana?
It tastes nothing like banana. It's got a very neutral flavor. It's largely used as a fried fish alternative. It's similar to jackfruit in that it's basically just fiber, but the way that the blossom has like those layers in there, it somewhat resembles fish. So,
do you know anybody else that uses the banana blossom?
Like at restaurants or
just in the food space that sells it like you do?
I think that there are a couple of brands that have it canned. I'm not sure if they're in the natural channel or not, but it was another one of those things where, in speaking with a couple of retailers, they had asked if that was something that we might be able to offer that would be clean label, without any preservatives and, not in a can, because it doesn't need to be in a can. And it sort of fit in with the jackfruit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and tell people where does the banana blossom come from?
It grows on the end of a bunch of bananas and then just falls off.
Okay. And is it like the mother seed for the bananas, or I'm a little confused
No,
what its role is. Is it a flower?
It is, yeah. So I should say I'm not a botanist over here, so I can only speak to this thing so much, but yeah, it's strictly a waste product. It would just be sent to the landfill or the compost heap. But it has that, kind of fun layered texture that is delicious when you batter and fry it with like a little bit of seaweed or, garlic and onion. And, again, it's a whole food. So that's great.
So you've got a restaurant.
Yes.
And why did you decide, in addition to taking on, everything you have, at Upton's Natural, did you decide to start a restaurant? And when did you decide to do that?
It was a terrible idea. No, the building that I'm in today, originally housed, it's been 10 years, and we were planning for it 2 years prior to that. So we started out in like 1,000 square feet, and we knew we had to expand, and I wanted to do something, in a neighborhood that I wanted to be in personally, and I wanted to find a building that would allow for not only our main business of manufacturing to operate with trucks coming and going, but to have a little retail outlet, just so we could use that as like almost like an R&D kitchen, like different items every week, and get people's feedback and be able to interact with the neighborhood. So that was the original plan with the restaurant, and then also to feed the staff, because we had, at the time, I think we only had like 15 or 20 people on the team, and there wasn't a lot to eat in the neighborhood. And when I started, it was countless days of, well, I forgot to bring lunch again, and there's, I can only go have a salad down the street so many times, so I guess I'm just going to stand here and eat, some some plain seitan. So I wanted to have this kitchen that could feed everybody. And that's what happened with the restaurant.
And so it's still there. It's still going strong.
Yeah, we didn't realize exactly how much we would grow or how quickly we would grow. The building is right around 9,000 square feet. So it was a huge leap. We were thinking, oh, it's going to be like at least 10 years before we need to expand. And, we're right in an area where we could previously had gotten, an off-site location that was, enough room, and the neighborhood's changed a lot, and different businesses have come in to where, we would be priced out of the size building that we would need to operate in today. But yeah, within the first 2 years, it started to get tight. And then we had to move manufacturing out about almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So we went from the 9,000 or whatever it was to 42,000.
That's kind of sick.
Yeah. It was a very challenging time in my life, just in managing not only the move of the operations, but adding the number of people. I mean, there was a point where we went from like 20 employees to 60 almost overnight, and we're working 3 shifts, and it was just completely insane. It was very, very difficult. And then I actually live in the building, right? So it was hard to be like, well, we're just going to close down the restaurant and move. And so that's part of why the restaurant is still going. I mean, it holds its own, but it definitely has its challenges.
Yeah. How many meals a week would you say you eat at the restaurant? Because it's right out your door, right? There.
Yeah. Maybe I might be down to 2 or 3 because I'll be traveling back and forth from the factory, and we have some good things that are suitable for a daily meal, because a lot of it is comfort food, where we've got like an Italian beef sandwich, which is very like, it's just like all seitan and a bunch of jardiniere, and you don't want to have one of those every single day. So we have a bowl that has like tofu and brown rice and kale and carrots, and
well, if you don't want the what'd you call that? The Italian sub?
Well, it's like it's Italian beef. If you've seen that show, The Bear.
I haven't.
It's a popular show right now, 2nd season. It's based on this Chicago delicacy known as the Italian beef, which is similar to a French dip. Okay. It's basically just beef and peppers on a roll, and you can dip it in this, like, in the gravy, basically.
Okay, so if you're dipping into Upton's Break Room, that's the name of the restaurant, 2 to 3 times a week, how many times are you dipping into the Liberation Donuts a week?
Also,
you started a donut place. Is it part of the Break Room?
During the pandemic, actually, after we moved the manufacturing out, we're like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this space? Because we had, on the main floor alone, we had at least an extra 1,500 square feet that was just for manufacturing previously. And, we were thinking, oh, maybe we could do a food hall, or, try to do, run a different operation out of here. And then the pandemic hit, so that, we weren't opening a food hall for people to come eat at. But there wasn't a vegan donut shop in town, and I had been playing with the idea for a long time, like, who doesn't love donuts? So we decided to launch just like a separate concept within the break room, which was really helpful, because if we just said, oh, now the break room has donuts, probably nobody cares. But if you read, oh, there's a new vegan donut shop, uh, that helped get people in the door. But last year we did combine the two, so there is no more Upton's Break Room. It's just Liberation Kitchen.
Ah,
Which is a little bit easier. And we've done some other fun things with the rest of the space. Right now we have our friends at Logan Arcade doing a pop-up. So we've got the world's largest pinball game, and a bunch of rare early video games that are available Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And to answer your question, I try to only have maybe one donut every week or every couple weeks, because it's tough. You're staring at those donuts every day, and in the beginning, especially when they're new, you're like, oh, I'll just have one today. And then
what's your favorite donut? You got a favorite?
I do. It's the Lydia's Eclair. So it's a plain donut that has vanilla pastry cream in the center. So it's cut in half, and then it has the pastry cream, and the top is dipped in chocolate. So it's got like a little bit of a crispy chocolate shell. And
all right, the next time I'm in Chicago, I'm going to get a Lydia's.
Okay. The For Greta, I think, is the favorite that's named after our late dog, Greta, because she loved whipped cream. That's sort of like a strawberry shortcake donut. So it's got, again, a plain donut with whip and then fresh strawberries.
Actually, I'm going to change it. I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, that one's really good too. But
yeah, whenever it's my birthday, we have a place here in Austin, Texas called Mr. Naturals.
Oh yeah, I've been there. I love that place.
Yeah, Mr. Natural, and they have the most amazing bakery goods, and they make birthday cakes. And I always get the kind of the strawberry shortcake birthday cake when it's my birthday. It's my one time I really indulge in a vegan cake, and I can't get enough of it. It's just incredible.
When is your birthday?
It's in February.
Oh, okay. Me too.
Yeah. Nice.
What day in February?
We happen to be the 16th.
Oh, I'm the 18th.
So, there you go. We're Aquarians, aren't we?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also saw on the website that the soft serve ice cream machine has been fixed.
Yes. Thankfully, it was just some kind of power contactor, and it was a routine thing. The guy came in that Monday and was just, 5-minute fix.
Right. Tell me, Daniel, are your mom and dad vegan?
They're not. As hard as I may have tried, over the years, they're just too set in their ways. Which,
yeah. Well, do you ever take time to vacation and enjoy yourself?
Not as much as I should. For many years, I would, and I try to give this advice to everybody that travels for business. When you do that, you have to take at least some time to see what's going on in every city. So, I've traveled. We had business in Europe for a long time, so I would try to take an extra couple days here and there. If I go to Sri Lanka or Thailand to visit factories, you take, if you're traveling that far, you try to take a week. But always make time for that, when you're out there doing business, because it's hard. If I'm sitting here, we were talking about trying to take a vacation last night, and I was like, oh, I can't even think about it, because I've just got to wait until this one thing is finished, or, until I know what's going to happen with that product or whatever it is. But if you said, hey, we need to go to Morocco tomorrow because there's a distributor that's really interested in bringing in containerfuls, I'm ready. Let's go.
To the best of your understanding, how many different stores are you in across the United States? 5,000, 10,000?
It's probably somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't. The other thing we don't do is pay a lot of money for data or third-party services like that. So,
Yep.
that's especially as a startup. When if you've got someone else's money and they're like, "Here's $100,000 to pay for that data," it's a lot easier to
Yeah.
spend it. But
I know that data, it's crazy how much they're wanting for data. And then the other thing that really kills me is all the free fill and the slotting fees, especially your first year when, you're just a little teeny weeny startup.
yeah, it's rough. I mean, that's another reason why we took that sort of slow growth model where it's like, we can afford a free fill. We've only actually paid slotting fees a handful of times over the years, and largely we waited for those kinds of conventional retailers to come to us.
Yeah.
Um, and thankfully, a lot of them have scaled back on slotting fees, and just done the one case free fill. But it can be tricky. I mean, there are natural stores that have a 2 case slotting fee, and they'll, if you don't perform in the first 3 months, even if you're not in the season of the item that you're launching, you're out because they've got somebody else they just got 25 grand from for a speed to shelf or whatever it is. And so it can be very dangerous out there.
Are you finding yourself doing much in the way of promos during the year?
Yeah, I mean that's one of our main ways to market the brand outside of social media. We've scaled back on a lot of in-person consumer events. I mean, now maybe next year we'll start to revisit those a little bit more. But certainly through the pandemic, the best way to gain trial was through like a quarterly promotion, because people see the tag and they're like, "Oh, it's $1 off. Maybe I'll try that." Or
Yeah. Oh, it's a great way to get trial for sure. Are you typically doing both the expos, Expo West and Expo East?
we've reduced it to Expo West. Again, I think largely because of the pandemic. It kind of seems like those shows aren't as important as they used to be.
Yeah.
And even meetings in person, I can't tell you how many times I've literally taken 3 days because of a retailer meeting request in a far-flung part of the country with only a couple flights in and out, but they got to meet with you in person for 15 minutes, and you're gone for 3 days.
Yeah.
So for that, I am thankful.
Yeah, for sure. Daniel, this has been great. This has been really wonderful. I'm really glad that I ran into you at Expo West. Thank you for agreeing to come on the Plan Strong podcast with me, and sharing a little bit about your journey. At the front of Upton's Naturals, you truly are such an iconic brand. You're such a leader in this space. And I have mad respect for you and what you've been able to accomplish as a entrepreneur in what I think is one of the most difficult places to find success, and that's in food. I just cannot believe how every day we're putting out another fire, trying to figure out another problem that arises. And I never would have thought that I have the temperament or the mentality for this. And it's been 3 years now, and I'm finally like, wow, I don't love it. You may love it. I don't love it, but but I am learning to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I love what I'm trying to achieve.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely days where I just want to get on a plane and go anywhere else and never come back. But yeah, it's a lot of highs and lows, and you just need to do your best to watch out for the people that are trying to get you, because they're out there. There's always some new trick that somebody's trying to pull. And just take it slow. Don't worry about about the big money, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Daniel, on the way out,
Yes.
where can people find you? One of the things that we didn't talk about, and I actually would be remiss if I didn't talk about it very, very briefly, is when did you start your D2C business? Can people order your products online and have it delivered straight to their door?
All of the shelf stable items are available on Amazon. Just we're not really set up for fulfillment like that.
Yeah.
So that was like the sort of the next best thing, since so many people are shopping on Amazon. But we also have a great partner that we started working with this year called fakemeats.com.
Yes.
Who has agreed to handle all of our cold chain shipping as well. So you can buy product from them if you're in a part of the country that doesn't have our products. But most parts of the country have some retailer with at least a handful of our SKUs. I mean, we're with Whole Foods globally, and Sprouts, and a number of Kroger and Safeway banners, and most of the independent stores, the NCGs and Infras of the world, and natural grocers, and the list goes on and on. So,
all right, on the way out. So the next time I'm in Chicago, I'm going to come to the let me see if I can remember it, Liberation Kitchen.
Yes.
I'm going to play a little pinball at the world's largest pinball something or other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also going to get, is it called the Greta?
The For Greta.
For Greta.
For Greta.
For Greta. That sounds incredible. Well, Daniel, until I see you next time,
yes,
keep it vegan and keep it Plant Strong. And can you hit me with a little fist bump, a virtual fist bump? Boom.
And thank you for having me as well. It's been a lot of fun. So
absolutely. All right. See ya.
Thanks.
I appreciate Dan's passion, much like my own, to create a healthier, more sustainable, and cruelty-free world. His determination and integrity are so admirable, which is in part why Upton's Naturals has gone from a shared kitchen to thousands of stores all over the world. I want to thank Daniel, and I know he'd agree when I say, let's keep it Plant Strong. Thank you for listening to the Plant Strong podcast. You can support the show by taking a quick minute to follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Leaving us a positive review and sharing the show with your network is another great way to help us reach as many people as possible with the exciting news about plants. Thank you in advance for your support. It means everything. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, Amy Mackey, Patrick Gavin, and Wade Clark. This season is dedicated to all of those courageous truth seekers who weren't afraid to look through the lens with clear vision and hold firm to a higher truth. Most notably, my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks for listening.